fact that energy companies come up to me after I've spoken to them and say, actually, can you not call us oil and gas anymore? Can you call us energy companies? Can you call us companies that are actually working on new energy as well? And I think it's absolutely fascinating how even the IOCs and the NOCs got on board in the last COP as well, and I think that's absolutely amazing as well. So look, what we're going to talk about here today on this CNBC IoT Powering the Digital Economy panel, which we're going to have after we've had an excellent conversation with the gentleman on my right, who I'll introduce in a few moments' time, is how to stay focused on sustainability. We're going to have a little video explainer as well, just to kind of set the topic before we speak to our panel as well. But safe to say, it's not just you lot here as well. You're the privileged ones who get to see this in person. We're actually live streaming this on LinkedIn, I believe, YouTube and Facebook as well. Right, let me just introduce the gentleman who is sitting to my right here as well. Manish Pant is an Executive Vice President for International Operations at Schneider Electric as well. And I've done a lot of work with Schneider over the last few years. In fact, I think Jean-Pascal, your chairman, is ignoring me this Davos for the first time in about a decade. I haven't spoken to him yet, but I did catch up with your CEO in the last 24 hours. And
he's delegating.
He's delegating, yes, okay, that's fine. I'll catch him somewhere in Davos before the end of it. But the thing for me is that I've worked with your company for a very long time, and I know how passionate every single one of you are. Literally every member of your team that I've met over the years are about sustainability and combining that with technological drives, with digitization and other processes as well. So for Schneider, it's in the DNA that you want sustainability to go hand in hand with digitization. But just tell us a little bit about your journey and how you see this developing from here.
Yeah. No, thank you, Steve. Great to be here with you on this panel. You know, at Schneider Electric, our purpose is around sustainability. That's what we do for a living, and that's what we bring to our customers and partners, which is what we call as Life is On. Schneider has been on this journey for a long time, and today what we are doing is, with our energy management and automation, we are overlaying or converging it with digitization and software. Linked to sustainability, of course, to deliver those solutions to our customers, and that's a journey that has started. We see today what we see is that sustainability is linked to economic impact. We are not doing sustainability for the sake of sustainability, but there's a real return, and investments in sustainability. The period of returns have shortened, and if you look at buildings, for example, investments made there typically can save up to 30% of energy. We are doing it ourselves. Just yesterday we got here an award for our Sustainability Lighthouse Factory in our Hyderabad plant, where using the technologies we have been able to save close to 60% over 4 years in terms of energy, in terms of waste optimization, in terms of water, and of course in terms of carbon footprint as well.
Manish, there's so many things to break down there, not least the fact that you didn't use that word, which I always struggle with. Is it eco-structure? I mean, the words that your company makes up as well, is that your responsibility? I think, yeah, eco-structure, but I kind of almost say it right, for having practiced for the last 5 years. But the fact of the matter is, we're not talking about moonshots here to get to profitability. We're not talking about new technology which will be available and at scale in the next 5 years or 10 years. We're talking about the here and now, and I think that's really important for our online audience especially to understand. We're not talking about investments that may or may not come off. It's not a power law investment that 1 in 10 will work. We're talking about technology that's here and now, aren't we?
That's right, that's right. And you said it, and thanks for mentioning EcoStructure. I mean, that's a platform that has evolved over the years, and when I give you the example of Hyderabad, sticking to that, it's built on the EcoStructure platform. Which is where we have thousands of sensors and data that is collected, bringing all our devices which are on IOT platform onto EcoStructure. So this is what we have developed today. EcoStructure is available across various segments, whether it's about data centers, industries, buildings, about the grid. Talking about the grid, I think that's something which is very crucial as part of this digital energy transition.
Sure.
That is going to happen.
It's really interesting. I've had so many conversations with brilliant people about grids, whether it's the CEO of Vestas here yesterday, or whether it was Ignacio Galan from Iberdrola today. And it comes back to the same point. There is some stunning technology out there here and now at scale, as you mentioned. But we need grids, and grids need to be supported by government, by legislation, and maybe by leveling the playing field, taking away something from some industries, i.e. subsidies, so that actually others want to invest in grids.
Yeah. Well, I'll say one of the things is about technology. I think what we need is more technology to enable that. Electricity is going to be, over the next 30 years, as the primary source of energy. It's today at about 20%. It's going to increase to 50% by 2050, and that is all going to flow through the grids. There are central grids, and then there are local grids, and then there are microgrids. And this is where when we talk about energy security, energy transition, it's very important to have those grids in place. And EcoStruxure has those different elements, whether it's about microgrid, whether it's about regional grids, whether it's about city grids, or even a national grid, or transnational grids, I think, which is the new thing that we are talking about.
Okay, I mean, something we're going to bring up in the panel later on is that about 50% of companies thereabouts have given their net zero transition blueprints as well. There's a lot that haven't then on that basis as well. What do we say now? What do you say to those companies that haven't fully enveloped or developed a net zero strategy and think of sustainability as a nice to have rather than essential?
Well, I think that there is never too late to start. The model that we say is, strategize, digitize, and decarbonize. I think it's good to start with strategizing and laying the roadmap for what you need to do to get to net zero. Then it's about digitization, because the only way you can achieve it is by digitizing all your resources and all the data that is coming in. It starts with monitoring. If you don't monitor, you're not able to reduce. And then, of course, decarbonize, and which is actually to make it happen. And then you have resources like, you mentioned it, EcoStruxure and others, and which are able to bring down and get the companies on that path of net zero.
I've said it before in other panels, and I know we've got a little bit of time, but I'm happy to go over just for a couple of seconds as well. Collaboration. One thing I know about Schneider is you're very, very keen on bringing up your entire ecosystem with you as well. How's that going?
Well, that's a real key focus, and it's one of the things that we are accelerating every year. I would like to talk to you about our supplier program, which is a zero carbon project. As an impact company, we have to do well to do good, and we have to, and vice versa, at the same time, take everybody along. Our success will not happen if you're collectively not able to achieve that. So the zero carbon project of Schneider, which is to see how we can get to our top 1,000 suppliers, which represent about 70% of our upstream carbon, how we can help them digitize, how we can get them decarbonized using the same tools and that we have with us. And that's a program that is very, very key to us. We are also doing it for other industries. We are doing it for the pharma industry. We're doing it for the semiconductor industry. So, yeah, I mean, that collaboration and making sure that we take everybody along is a key part of what we believe in.
Finally, you don't pronounce the X in EcoStruxure?
Well,
you did it without the X. I always get it pronounced wrong. EcoStruxure or EcoStruxure or?
Well, we call it EcoStruxure, and I would leave it to my marketing colleagues to tell us about it.
I'm getting the glare from your marketing colleagues. I better move on. Manish, it's lovely to see you. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Steve. Have a good session.
Thank you. Well, look, that was a fabulous scene setter for us, but in case you haven't got the message already out there online as well, we're actually going to give you another little scene setter, 2 to 3 minute video now, while we actually move the furniture around a little bit. And I've got an absolutely top-notch panel for you coming up in a couple of moments' time.
It's the start of another year, and the world is one step closer to 2030 and its many climate targets. With varying commitments from the private sector, what obstacles threaten these targets and what could help accelerate progress?
We now know that there's about 725 billion which has been committed, and we of course celebrate that. But the truth is we need $4 trillion in order to help the developing countries to get to net zero by 2050. and we need $5.9 trillion to get to 2030.
Half of the world's largest 2,000 publicly listed companies have now set net zero targets. Yet, according to a report by the independent consortium Net Zero Tracker, only 4% meet the UN's starting line criteria. To make matters worse, economic pressures and geopolitical uncertainty is shifting business priorities.
It is the most volatile, most dangerous time for geopolitics in my lifetime. Every CEO I'm talking to, all the banks that I'm talking to, are factoring in geopolitics in their thinking in a way that they didn't 5 years ago, and they didn't before Putin's war in Ukraine, which was a geopolitical wake-up call.
If I asked anybody in Europe 2 or 3 years ago what they wanted from energy, they would almost exclusively have said net zero. If I asked them today what they want from energy, they will inevitably tell you they want an energy system that works.
Despite the uncertainties, a lot of companies that have moved towards net zero are already seeing benefits.
We deal with all the big multinationals. If you're not on the green path, I think they won't even use you. They will actually discriminate against you. So when you look at it, actually in the longer term, you are actually more profitable.
Many still think that sustainable practices come at a cost, but is the opposite true in the long term? How much value can adopting sustainable measures bring? And when is the tipping point for companies to commit to net zero targets or get left behind? Welcome to CNBC's IOT, powering the digital economy debate, as we focus on how embracing the values of sustainability can help drive value.
Right, well then, it's a bit of a scene setter. Look, I've got this most amazing panel. Most of the people on this panel I've met before, with the honourable exception of one gentleman there as well. And I can tell you they are some of the best speakers and some of the most passionate speakers around on this issue as well. Look, I'll just take one step backwards before we go forward as well. A lot of us were at COP28 as well. A lot of us thought, right, okay, despite the concerns about the presidency there was some real progress made. But a lot of corporations went away, having made their declarations about net zero, having made their statements about how green they are, but actually putting meaningful plans in place is a nice to have rather than an essential. I spoke to one man yesterday. I thought, well, do you know what? I understand why sustainability is a secondary to you. And this man was a man who's the president of a country that borders Russia and just wants to survive rather than worry about green issues. And he said to me, he says, yeah, I would love to worry about sustainability, but that's my secondary issue at the moment when I've got the Russian guns very close to my border as well. It wasn't Ukraine, it was another bordering nation as well. And I think there's very few people who have that kind of excuse. People say, I need to worry about my shareholders, I need to worry about my employees, I need to worry about my capital growth, I need to worry about my debt profile. But actually, that's just a list of excuses. And I think pretty much we're all on the same page on this one as well. I will tell you who the panel is before we move on as well, because in no particular order, to my absolute right, and it's lovely to see Dr. E.M. Kadri, who is the CEO of Sabancı. Obviously, you split up a very, very well-known Belgian company for a 160-year-old company and have done incredibly well doing that as well. Cenk is the CEO of Sabancı Holdings, of course, enormous conglomerate, so absolutely vital that we get your view on how different parts of the business are moving forward, and yet there are other parts of the business it's going to be very hard to move forward on sustainability. I think it's fair to say a good friend of mine, Esther Beger, is the CEO of Novozymes as well, and it's nice to see her son in the audience as well. One of the most passionate speakers you will ever meet on sustainable issues as well. The one man I haven't met so far is Eric Usher, who is the head of the UN Environment Programme for Finance Initiative as well. You play a key role, of course, in making sure the finance moves to the right position as well, or just telling us what the barriers are as well. And we've spoken online before. I don't think we've met in person. Rebecca Minguella, who's the CEO of Clarity AI. If we're going to do this, we need databases, we need knowledge, we need AI. And Rebecca can tell us a little bit about how that is helping move companies to sustainability and making it easier for them to do so as well. What I'll do to start off with, an opening round, I'll move from you all the way down the line and just ask the very simple question. How do you think we're doing on the move to net zero? Do you think that the companies that aren't embracing it quickly enough, do you think that their excuses are just falling on deaf ears and actually that they should just get their act together, or actually there's some legitimate reasons why they're not moving forward?
Accenture did a study, Steve, just recently, and they published it. In the G2000 companies around the world, only 18% have a net zero carbon, a real roadmap, and they execute against it. Only 18%. So no, there is a lack of sense of urgency. I represent here, as you know, hard to abate, so it's not easy for us. It was impossible when I joined Solvay by 2019. We were cutting half of the emissions Paris were asking us to do. And since then, we dreamed big. It was scary dreams, and my team did it. We did 2 times Paris every year, and we are profitable. And if we can do it, everybody can do it. So yeah, the road to carbon neutrality is long, is costly, is not easy. We need to rethink regulation in a region like Europe. We need to defend IP and have regulatory recognition for the good guys who are doing the good jobs, because you talked about the shareholders. We may come back to that later. And 3, we need to scale up innovations. We need to think differently about chemistry, right? I mean, chemistry is about cooking. Carbon is not, you know, the devil, is not the enemy. We take just the Mendeleev table and we do something out of it. And I want to have enzymes, novozymes. I want to have waste. Because if you recycle the waste, it's not a waste anymore. I need biomaterials. I need Gen AI to help me to rethink the way we do chemistry. And we need to embed circularity in the way we do chemistry. Because in my old days, and I'm old enough now to say it, 30 years ago when I started in my chemical lab, nobody asked me to think circularity. Every product I was making, they asked me for the end of life. It's a crime to talk about the end of life. We should talk about the end of the first usage, second usage, third usage. Yeah, I'm not going to throw away this. No. I'm going to use it again. It's the same for a product, for a molecule. So I think, but I'm an optimist, I'm a scientist, I'm a humanist, and I believe in people ingenuity. And I believe that there are solutions out there where public financing, AI, you know, the value chain represented here needs to help us to reinvent the way we do business.
Just to say, I'm going to do one round all the way down, and then after that, by all means, jump in a bit. But you've already raised so many issues. I'm going to pick up 1 or 2 of them. Well, just one, actually, because I do want to get through everybody in a moment. You talked about hard to abate, and the chemical sector is one of those tough sectors as well. Did you do this along with your peers in the European chemical sector, or actually did you have to go out on your own? Because it's very interesting that the question is, would it put you at a competitive disadvantage if you go out on your own, if you lead from the front as well? Or actually has the whole of the European chemical industry found a way to do this?
Well, frankly, there is a new generation of leaders who believe that this is the right thing to do. But we see now, specifically with the energy crisis in Europe, and there is a big elephant in the room, Steve, is the lack of competitiveness in Europe. Energy prices are higher than the US or China. We are still in the middle of this raging war, right, with inflation and with post-pandemics fatigue as well. So things are not stable, right? And there is lack of competitiveness. We need infrastructure. As a chemist, as a hard to abate, every side has a different solution. It's not one size fits all. So, for example, in Germany, I needed biomass coming from recoverable wood, non-recoverable wood waste, and I had to build the whole ecosystem. In Dombasle, in France, it's about your waste, your bin. So I did, you know, an alliance with Veolia, a waste company. They are collecting your bin, and we are using it to switch from coal. Amazing. But each time it takes 2 to 3 years permitting. Permitting is insane in Europe and in some other regions. It takes too long to just get, you know, you build the business case, you go to the steer room, you have the money, you know, you don't even ask for the money. And it takes 2 to 3 years. So no, I think there is, you know, a lot of people who are willing to do it. The problem is these regulatory environments, which is too complicated. The average tenure of CU is less than 4 years. So if you start year 1 and your permit comes year 5, you don't even see it happening.
I hear all of those issues you mentioned so many times. It's soul destroying for innovators, absolutely. Cenk, you're working obviously primarily from Turkey, but you have a global business as well. Just tell us about some of the challenges in some of the businesses that you have within your group, or actually tell us about some of the amazing changes you've made to some of your businesses on the drive to sustainability.
Of course.
Yeah, we are an investment holding company, mainly focusing on energy, industrials, and financial services. And each industry has different challenges. With our energy businesses on distribution and generation, actually, we help people to get clean energy. So we have increased our renewable investments. Right now, we are making every 1 out of 3 windmill in Turkey. And it will continue like that in the coming 5 years. We are investing with our capabilities, agile capabilities in United States right now to actually renewable energy. Meanwhile, we are trying to, of course, clean our portfolio in the energy. Of course, banking, financial services, Scope 1, Scope 2 emissions are quite easy to do that, but we have to help all the Scope 3 environments to get cleaner. So that's the difficulty, but we deploy huge amount of money, we lend money to all our customers so that they can get cleaner. On industry, like the chemistry, we have hard-to-abate sectors. We have cement, we have composites, we have tires. But we have proven that we can do that. So all our companies right now have their roadmaps for 2050, 2030. As we have started, actually, we have committed without having their commitments. And then on the way, we see that actually they are getting there. So from last year to year, to this year, on average, we have decreased 11% our carbon emissions, 9% our water consumption. So, and 5 of our companies right now, SBTi approved companies. So if you target, if you give direction, all the young generation, they find ways to come up. And then we are managing an ecosystem among these companies, but also right now we are enlarging our ecosystem with startup world. So we are presenting our platforms to them to test their technologies. And with that, actually, we are growing this ecosystem that speeds up the transition to cleaner world, actually.
And just to go back to the conversation we've had with Manish as well, these changes, these enormous changes that you're making throughout this whole host of investable companies within your group and the startups, this isn't costing Sabancı Group more. It's actually making fine business sense, is it?
Yes. We see this as an opportunity. If you just look to ESG from reporting perspective, that's a headache. But if you see that as an opportunity, because the whole world is creating a new economy, a clean economy. Now, in our investment committee, we have the first criteria is strategic fit. The second criteria is sustainability. So any portfolio investment that we are going to do should dilute our existing footprint, carbon footprint, and then we look to the financials. So with this filtering, actually, we find out very,
But you won't invest in a company or go on a journey of investment without it ticking the boxes on both, will you?
We don't. First, we have to tick, and then we go and invest.
This is the takeaway that we have to keep reminding the world that this isn't philanthropy.
No, it's not charity.
This is total business sense. Esther Beige, just give us 1 or 2 examples from your world, because we talk about this all the time, you and I.
I fully agree with you, with all of you. It is not about sustainability or delivering shareholder value. Actually, sustainability is the only way for delivering long-term shareholder value. So it is the right way. And there's mainly 2 simple principles of why there is the strong statement, it becomes true. For running a company and deliver long-term growth, you need demand and you need people. There's many other things you need. You need insured technology, you need the debt, but the demand, it's moving on the solutions of the future. The demand on fossil-based solutions is going to peak within this decade. So do you really want to invest for the solutions that they're going to be in decline within this decade? If you want to attract the people, if you want to attract the very best talent, you need to give a purpose. You need to give a place that you feel that you belong. You need to feel that you're going to be part of something bigger. You're not going to be able to attract the best of the best, which is what you win. You need to be winning companies. So it is not sustainability or shareholder value creation. It is shareholder value creation through sustainability. I have the privilege to work in a company that we're showing that this is possible. We have reduced our CO2 emissions since we started the commitment of moving in this journey, 68%, and we have delivered within that period more than 20% growth, revenue growth, without compromising the margins at 25 EBIT, not even EBITDA, EBIT margin. It is possible. It is true that we're small. It is true that we are not in the hard to abate. So maybe I would say we need more of you. That's what we need. We need more of Imran. We need more of CEOs that they make the question, how am I going to be part of that future, more on how am I making the change last after me. That's what we need. Absolutely. And then we have to find a way of how to work better collectively to remove roadblocks that they are unnecessary. We need to work more with authorities to create the framework that we can move bolder, future, faster. We have a regulation which is based on the past. It takes 6 years to register a microbe to replace fertilizers. In the US, you can do it with 2. We're subsidizing fossil-based solutions. We're subsidizing the past. We're spending $8 trillion per year. That's 8% of the GDP. That is more than what we invest in education for that talent of the future that we also don't have.
But Vanessa, I've had this conversation with so many policymakers, and unfortunately, most of the Western world is going to the polls this year, whether it's India or the democracy, whether it's United States, whether it's across the whole of the European Union as well. And very few parliamentarians and governments are willing to take away something in election years as well. And I don't know how we get past the subsidy issue. I really don't, because we didn't in COP28. We didn't put a price of carbon on successfully on the global basis at COP28. And there were some things missing that have been left for, I think, even COP30, to be honest, rather than 29. Which is in Brazil, of course.
Well, first, you have to choose to be optimistic. Otherwise, you don't.
You do. You infuse me with optimism. I would like to live in your household because I'm sure it's the most optimistic place in the world. Yes, I've had the nod on that one.
But then it's the power of collaboration. Business has a responsibility. I have the gift to be part of a CEO Climate Alliance, to co-chair a CEO Climate Alliance. This is a group of CEOs, more than 100 CEOs. Collectively, we bring in, Novozymes is a small component, but more than $4 trillion that we embrace our responsibility to move to decarbonization. So we already have reduced collectively our CO2 emissions faster than the world, but we also embrace the responsibility, not only what we do, it's to make other ones come in through Scope 3. You mentioned Scope 3. Top 1,000 companies. The collective Scope 3 emission of the top 1,000 companies, it is 25% of the CO2 emissions of the globe. So if we collectively go and not only reduce our emissions, but we also ask our suppliers, could you please start considering your carbon footprint?
Yeah.
That's how we drive change. It's not only what we do, it's what you make others drive.
I hear you. And we can talk a bit more about Scope 3 in a few moments' time, but I need to move on to Eric in a few moments. The only thing I will say is asking them nicely to come with you is a carrot. Maybe there's a stick in there somewhere as well. Come with us, or actually we're going to try and find someone else as our partner.
Yeah, you go with a carrot and the stick. Yeah. You go showing when you bring this data, you're going to skip 3 of the process approval to become a top supplier. You're going to be a part of the selected suppliers. So it's the carrot and the stick. But it's more importantly embracing the responsibility to drive that dialogue.
Well, we've already talked about the new generation of leaders as well, so hopefully that is part of the equation. What is also part of the equation is getting the money in place as well. And I think what has been brilliant about the 3 guests already, it is absolutely made very clear, as it had with Manish Pant as well, is that the business case is there. Tell me a little bit about the rules and how the financing principles are in place at the moment and how they're developing to put the money in place so that these amazing, thriving businesses can do what they do sustainably.
Yeah, no, thanks. And I think, the financial markets, they are enablers. I think what they really want to hear is what we hear here, is essentially, their challenge and 2 main points. If we talk about net zero, you have about 50% of the financial system who've set targets, but targets, the question is, are they credible? We work mostly in the banking sector. To frame a little bit there, about 40% of the banking system have set targets. We have the 10 largest banks in Europe, plus many others in Europe, 10 largest in North America, the 7 largest in Latin America, many of the largest in Asia, and also in Africa and Middle East. It's a global phenomenon. That's the first point. I think the second point is it's easier to decarbonize a financial portfolio than to actually work with your clients to help them decarbonize. So that, the real action is not really an divest decision. It's about how do you work with your partners, your clients, your customers to figure out what they need to do.
So it's carrot, not stick, is what you're saying?
Well, yes, it's opportunity driven. And essentially, and what a bank will do or an investor, they'll say, okay, we set a target, but how do we make it real? First of all, 2050, that's the next lifetime. 2030 is the first interim where we have to have clear business targets within the business cycle. How much we're going to reduce in which sector? We need to look at steel, we need to look at cement, agriculture, transport, energy. And for every one of those sectors, we need to understand what is the transition pathway. Chemicals, how is that industry going to decarbonize? We can't come up with it ourselves as a bank, because we need to work with others. We need to work with the scientists. We need to work with the industry. And then once we have that pathway for the industry, we need to work with our clients and figure out, is this client going to be a leader? Are they going to win in that transition, in that pathway? Are they going to be a laggard? Are they going to become an increased credit risk for us? And we need to start putting pressure on. So I think it's that relationship between finance, capital, and the real economy, we would say, where the action is. And it's true up and down the promenade here, net zero is a little bit less prominent than maybe in recent years, but what we see under the hood is that the work hasn't stopped. The political environment has gotten more complicated. The geopolitics are very complicated. But this is about doing business. And this is about how a bank or an investor or insurer or actors in real economy say, well, this is about our future. And I think the key differentiator on the future is everybody knows the future will not be like today. And the question is, are you going to be a future taker or are you going to be a future maker?
There is enormous demand from the finance sector to find viable projects, though, as well. Yeah. One thing that I saw certainly out of Dr. Sultan's presidency as well, is that the money's there, whether it's from the Middle East, whether it's from Asia, especially from China as well. Everybody is craving sustainable initiatives, but they want to make it profitable as well. They don't want to go down too many blind alleys as well. But the money is there for the right projects, isn't it? I mean, we haven't got a logjam. Despite the fact that the cost of money is completely repriced in the last couple of years, the money's there, isn't it?
I mean, I think a differentiator is the really green stuff, like renewable energies, mobilizing a lot of capital today, more than fossil fuel industries. So that's positive. Electric vehicles, positive. The money is starting to move away from the really non-green stuff. But the real challenge is everything in between. What some would say the 50 shades of green. And therefore, when we talk about transition finance, how do you help companies, industries transition? And there, the challenges there, there's a lot of definitional issues. What does it mean to transition? If you're going to work in helping deal with heavy emitting sectors, and you're going to put more capital in to help them reduce, that's going to increase your emissions profile. So there's a lot of definitional stuff that's needed before the capital is going to flow really at scale.
Eric, you mentioned 40% of banks are working on this. I think you said 40%.
Yep.
So that begs the question, which I should have asked straight away, what are the other 60% of banks doing?
That's a problem, obviously.
They don't care?
This is what we hear. Well, it's definitely an issue, and we do start to talk about like a dirty premium, like someone is dropping all these assets so someone else can pick them up.
But this is one of the first points that my great friend here talked about as well, is like the competitive landscape.
Yep.
If there are people who are not putting a premium on green and doing it at a dirty premium and then unfair competition, when's there going to be kind of, I don't know, the investors in those banks making the pressure, or are they really not putting them under pressure?
Yeah, to some extent, investors, also regulators. Right?
Regulators. We'll come back to regulators. And just, I'm going to speak to Rebecca now because she's been stunningly patient at the end there as well. But then, as I say, we'll just jump in on everything and we'll see where we go on this one. I like this bit. It's where it just goes all crazy and I just throw the paper out the window. Eric mentioned that net zero is not as prominent on the top parade here in Davos this year. Last year, he couldn't move for cryptocurrencies, but what I can't move for now is AI, the acronym. It's absolutely everywhere. AI can really add the next level of invigoration to a lot of these projects. I mean, we spoke to Manish about digitization. Tell us about how AI and the initiatives that are being done can really invigorate the process.
Yeah, there are multiple areas in which AI could significantly impact the climate space, of course. But in my space, specifically my company, Clarity AI, focuses on providing technology to the investor segment, the corporates, consumers as well, to better understand sustainability more broadly, climate also specifically. Because one of the reasons why I believe companies are also struggling, and mainly investors, to identify those opportunities of investment and deploy capital is because they find they don't have the tools to better understand that 50 shades of gray that Eric was mentioning, like where do I invest? And many times they also lack the understanding of the technologies, the trade-offs, and even more so how to do the forward-looking views on what's going to happen. So of course AI is helping. We have been using AI, by the way, for 6-7 years now. So for us, it's great that there is so much hype now.
I mean, we spoke several years ago for the first time.
Yes,
so
yes.
It's amazing how it's just become the biggest thing in 2023.
You know what is interesting? That when we started, we were struggling to get investors to adopt anything or even touch anything that had to do with machine learning, AI estimations, because they thought it was a black box. If we will go with, okay, we have these controversies analysis done with machine learning, fully automated. No, I need an analysis report done by a person. And now they are now.
Now they don't want the people.
No, well, they want a combination. They always want to have some kind of like the human in the loop, right? They want to hear that there are people somehow looking at the quality.
Until they realize there's a cost to that human being.
Yes, exactly. But it's good that now finally we have the hype, because hopefully if they walk the talk, they are going to be adopting more those technologies and using carbon estimations. We did carbon estimations on 30,000 companies, like covering 98% of the market cap 3 years ago. And they wouldn't use it because they wouldn't rely on estimations. And suddenly now they will. So that's good, because they will be able to.
Just before we move back to the rest of the panel as well, just tell us a little bit about what the information that, I think one thing I've noticed, and again, I popped into a session in Dubai, and it was Mike Bloomberg, it was Mark Carney, and several others, Henry Fernandez from MSCI. And they were talking about putting together this open source database as well of information, so that everyone can see what everyone, how sustainable everyone is.
And public utility for
and that for me was great, so that everyone's going to have this great tool, so we can rate companies, we can work out who's moving forward, we can work out, and so then you can just get through the gump, because there are too many different standards out there, aren't there? So that for me was one of the most underreported but important sessions in COP23.
Yeah, that's a very encouraging initiative. We're also part of it, but the issues that, in my opinion, we might be moving too slow, right? There are only 360 companies in that database, right? And there are 60,000 listed companies in the world or more, right? So it's still very small number that is covered, but hopefully that public utility is going to expand that coverage. But it's very focused on very few companies right now. So it's still. But hopefully with the new regulation that the CSRD in Europe and the new regulations requiring most of the companies to report at least a minimum amount of information.
Yeah. Well, let's go through now. And as I say, everyone can jump in at any stage now. We've got 20 chaotic minutes here as well. Should we crack on with regulation as well? Because we need more, we need better regulation, we need global regulation. I mean, you started off talking about this as well. It's like the hand of government, the hand of the European Commission as well. They've got a role to play, and are they not playing their role?
Well, first of all, I can start.
Yeah.
I can start shooting. We are in a fragmented world. There is no harmonized carbon pricing, right?
And I was hoping.
Yeah, I know.
I was hoping.
Yeah.
That this would be the COP?
I was hoping as well. At Solvay, for example, when I joined the company in 2019, I put an internal carbon pricing in the company.
Wow.
It was 50 euro a ton when it was 25, and I put it 100 euro a ton in 2021 when it was 50, before the Russian crisis. People told me, you're crazy, you're going to destroy your business. Actually, it was the best thing, and it impacted the pockets of my leaders, my business presidents and mine, by the way. So we made it as part of the way we invest, right? And that internal carbon price in a harmonized one was the deal maker to change the paradigm inside the company. So Fragmented world, no harmonized carbon pricing, so there is no level playing field. Europe being the most regulated region in the world, with the oldest industrial infrastructure, chemistry, normal, it started here, needs to reinvent the way we're going to decarbonize. So we are all pro-Green Deal, right? That's not the point. It's how to backcast from the 2050 landing and how to get this affordable energy. I'm agnostic to energy. I can use biomass, hydro, solar, wind, whatever. I just need this affordable 24/7, 365 days a year, right? So we need that. So coming back to regulation, yeah, I talked about permitting. I'm not going to repeat myself. We like regulation because it pushes us to be innovative and disruptive, but we need to simplify the complexity. And Europe has a 27 member of states. There is no, we need unity. I like diversity, but we need unity. And I give you an example, Steve. In waste, so I'm using waste to replace coal, right? In my boilers, waste doesn't travel in Europe. Doesn't travel. France is 300 kilometers, Bulgaria cannot bring the waste of others. But if you reuse the waste and the bin to decarbonize, it's great, it's a resource. So I think we need an industrial policy, we need an energy policy, and we need it to support us to be sustainable and profitable, which we can do. We did it. If Solvay can do it, we doubled our returns from 8 to 15%, 15.5%, in 5 years, where we did 2 times Paris.
Yeah, we don't rush in Europe, do we? With our, I mean, you know, don't get me wrong, I'm a very proud European, but 27 countries don't get to any decision very quickly, do they? Esther?
Not very quickly. And on top, it needs to be the right decision. So we need regulation. Regulation is good. But then we need regulation which is looking forward and not backwards. We have a beautiful regulation, but it's based on the solutions of the past, on the way we were working before. We need a regulation that brings possible, creates the path, allows the path, protects the consumers, protects the planet, protects the biodiversity, but does not create unnecessary roadblocks. The solutions exist. We have the solutions that leave alternatives to pesticides and chemicals, through microbes, through enzymes, through many other alternatives. There are other solutions that bring fulfill the doubling of protein demand, not only by feeding more sustainable the chickens and the cows, but also how to keep plant-based food healthy.
Yeah.
Giving the texture, the experience. We have solutions that decouple the exposure to fossil-based, not only green energy and solar, but also biomethane, bioethanol, biomass into biofuels. But then you have all these solutions that they get stuck into the path of the past, creating a very, very slow registration period.
Is it the fact that we don't get to the right solution, or we get there eventually, we're just too slow?
The solutions exist, but every time you go into a new market or you create a new solution, you need 6 years to go from solution to sales. Because you have to go through all the criteria of solutions that they are.
Okay, so look, I do want to bring everyone in on this as well, but when you two, as top European business persons, go to the Commission or go to your governments and say, why is it still this way? Why are we still stuck in the past? When you go to Mr. Sanchez, or we go to Ursula von der Leyen, or we go to the crew, or what have you, what do they say? What's the politician's response?
That's half of the problem is we didn't go before. So I think business companies, we have a responsibility also to embrace that we did not proactively sit at the table. We let it go and we complain. We have to be proactively being there. Then a big portion of the problem, it is that it's not so easy to make that change. And it requires the courage and the leapfrog. We need the consumers also to embrace the awareness of the regulation of the future. Yeah. We need to create the understanding of how are these new solutions looking for and what it makes. I'll give you one example. The novel proteins to bring healthy foods through plant-based as an ingredient, here in Europe, they cannot be used. They can be used in the US because we look at the solution, which is the same that the cow makes, but we look at the way that they're being produced. So we have to think in a different way. At the high level, the conversations take place, but it's not cascading, and we're too slow on the implementation of making the change.
Do you have the same barriers?
Similar, but I hate regulations, but we have to bear with them. I was privileged enough to participate to Innovators or Unicorns dinner on Monday evening.
Right.
Okay, and with all the startup companies over there, and Sam Altman was there, you know, the idol of OpenAI.
Yeah.
And, you know, he said that...
The idol of AI or not-for-profit AI? I used to be the latter, but then I kind of got a bit confusing, didn't it?
Yeah. So
AI suddenly became for-profit. Or is that just me being cynical?
He said one thing very critical. He says that technology brings prosperity to everywhere. Okay? So actually, now with OpenAI or with AI, education, pharma, material science getting faster, getting cheaper to innovate in those. So now we have to compare the speed of innovation and speed of regulation. Speed of regulation will be always slower.
Well, it's amazing you brought that up, though. And Rebecca, you're the great person to, and this is almost not the right panel, but I'm going to go for it as well. We have lots of amazing products that could be to market if it wasn't for permitting, regulation, all kinds of issues. Whereas, correct me if I'm wrong in AI, we've got the product, but we haven't got the regulation yet. It's almost like we've gone the other way round.
Well, we have the EU AI Act, right? In Europe, European Union has been pioneering the first regulation on AI. There's still a lot of work to do. It's funny because yesterday I was doing a debate with Professor Stuart Russell at Politico on should AI be open or closed, right? Which is the debate right now. Until what extent should we have closed models or open models? Should we all collaborate? By the way, open AI doesn't mean that it's free of charge, because there is also a lot of debate of, do you pay for it? Is it for profit, non-profit? But open, it means that there is more collaboration, and we try to move faster also on controls and regulations, because the dangers of an uncontrolled AI model is very real.
Yeah, it was the films I grew up with, and now it's reality.
The dystopia, this dystopia of machines controlling humans, it's very real. No one, of course, knows when or how or whether or not it might happen, but more and more, even the coders working on those models don't understand the responses very well, right? So it's scary.
Yeah, I still think I'm part of some great big AI simulation. Eric, in terms of regulation, I'm sure I am, yeah. No. But I can't be. No one would make one like me. Just defunct model. Eric, what about regulation and finance as well? How can it act as a catalyst for more sustainable development?
I mean, it's interesting, obviously, if you take finance versus AI, and many would view that there's too much regulation in finance, not enough in AI. And I think if we talk about the climate challenge, some skeptics would basically say private sector doing this voluntary net zero stuff means nothing. All we need is a regulator to regulate, do their job. Regulating is tough. Knowing how to regulate is tough, and it's really only when regulators see leaders in the private sector voluntarily leading in that regulators can say, okay, I see how they're doing it. We can now start to standardize this, and we can basically get the other 50% involved. But if the regulators move too quickly, often it will pose other types of challenges, just that regulators don't understand the business the way the chemical companies, the way the banks, the insurers do. Of course, regulation, we believe, is needed in AI. Once again, the question is, how do you get there, and what is the relationship between public and private?
Smarter consumers, and bringing, not the consumers, equipping the consumers with a smarter information would also accelerate the change. If when you go and buy, you would be able to choose the carbon footprint. You would be able to understand the hidden costs of those goods that you buy. I'm not saying you would pay a premium, but maybe you would make a choice, conscious choice. Today, we don't have access to this information. So there is a beauty here on, yes, collaborating industries and bringing our voice with the regulatory agents, because they mean good. The willingness is there, but also creating the space on how we make consumers smarter and capable to make better decisions, not at a premium, but at least consciously aware of what it is that you buy.
Yeah, I mean, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Rebecca.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, on the consumers, but it's interesting. We have been trying to bring those solutions to consumers for years now. And there are a few challenges there, of course, that consumers always say they care, but not necessarily, even when you show it to them very clearly, not necessarily choose sustainable versus other things. But when asked, they always say they care. And then, of course, most of the e-commerce platforms, they all care about sustainability as long as it's whatever information is not damaging the conversion, right? And one more click of the customers to check sustainability, that's a bad thing on the conversion of funnel of those platforms, right? So it's complicated to get it there.
I think it's an interesting conversation. There is another big elephant in the room is to create demand.
Yes.
So, and when you say consumers' rights awareness is more than that. Syensqo is in the batteries, right? So we produce materials for batteries. The world needs more efficient, cheaper batteries, smaller batteries, safer batteries. And we are working in generation 4 and 5. So while technology is there, we are in generation through lithium ion and we are working on 4 and 5, without charging stations, the consumer is not going to buy an EV. And by the way, I love EV because I can double the opportunity for my business, right? There is no, there is no sales. So we need financing, we need the authorities, we need the nations to start building this ecosystem. So that's the demand we need to create. And it's electrolyzers. You are using electrolyzers. We are in green hydrogen production, and you need the ecosystem. You need the green energy to make it green hydrogen. You need our products, which makes a membrane to electrolyze, water to make hydrogen. And we need the critical mass. We cannot do it alone, right? Or use byproducts. I mean, we're chatting in the lounge, right? When you can use byproducts of hydrogen and reuse it rather than waste it. So it's amazing, the opportunities, but we need to create that demand. It's important. And cannibalize the way we were purchasing and buying in the old days.
I think ecosystem is the key word here. We have to build the ecosystem. I think we are together with Ilham.
We are building the ecosystems, aren't we? I mean,
yes, we are.
I don't want people to go away with the impression that we're at ground zero on this. We have started, haven't we?
But that speeds up everything. And as actually business society with corporations, we have to concentrate on the impact that we are creating. Together, we are in Global Impact Coalition right now. How to collaborate better and how to increase the speed of change.
When there is a critical mass of people like you five on this panel, I beg your pardon, and then, dare I say it, some people like me who are reporting it more and reporting it better and being more educated about the opportunities as well and how this works, do we get an exponential growth at some stage? Do we get to a point where it's building, then we get a hockey stick? Is that how this is going to work in finance, in innovation, in ecosystems? Does that feel like the way? I mean, I talked to you there because I'm still talking about the 60% of banks. I love the fact that 40% of banks have got buy-in. But I hate the fact that 60% haven't.
I mean, I think you can look at issue by issue, but every economic actor will always say, what is my comparative advantage? Where's the opportunity? But also, what are my competitors doing? So if you can get a group of competitors starting, there is a very strong network effect, essentially. And when regulators start to say, oh, yes, this is important, and the different actors start to refer to it and talk about it, that creates a good, positive ambition loop.
Well, that's very clear. We need leadership. Leadership. And I need the bankers to say, okay, I see what my peers do, but I'm going to be brave in this. I'm going to put a carbon price that's going to hurt me and my chairman,
And we need the leaders to be more fearless, like bolder, because right now there is such a huge ESG backlash in certain regions, like, of course, in the US as well. And it's funny because we were working with 2 retail banks, I'm not going to name any names, one in the UK, one in the US, who wanted to incorporate the carbon footprint into the online payments, right, into the platform for consumers. And with this ESG backlash, they said, no, we are not going to do it yet until the elections in November because we might be perceived as a woke, that we're pushing certain views to our clients.
I still want to know which bit of woke it is. I still want to know which bit of woke it is that the critics don't like. What, you don't like the E bit, the S bit, or the G bit? I don't know, I kind of feel quite proud that I'm all three. Which bit of the woke but don't you people who don't like woke like? Online, give me some abuse online, I'd like to know. You're going to come in on this.
I wouldn't count on the exponential, Steve.
You wouldn't?
No, I think it's going to be more gradual. But but increasing the momentum more than exponential.
Sure, it's not like AI where they didn't want to know for years, they wanted a human being, and suddenly you can't move for a 30-time sales valuation in AI?
And I genuinely don't believe that exponential is good. It's a way, and Hindra mentioned that at the beginning, it's a lot of upgrading what we have to. It is about, yes, shift and lift. It is about build new. The new investments need to be about the future, but it's a lot about saying thank you on what we have. Some of it, it's the past, but some of it, it's converting. This is why I don't see it's exponential. Because, but I do see that the peak, it's there. Yeah. And we're going to move in the less fossil, more sustainably. That it's at the midst of happening.
I think we have a history. We are scientific people and technologists, so we know how to upscale a technology. So when you take green hydrogen, for example, today the cost is 7, 8, or 9 euro a kilo. It needs to be below 2 to be cost competitive. We know that. You need more electrolyzers. He's one of the first one using them, and I'm using one of those in Europe. And we need that critical mass. We need data to learn and cut the waste and be high. The difference why it's going to go quicker is because Gen AI is disrupting our industry. ChatGPT is disrupting our industry. I dream of a ChatGPT of the elements of Mendeleev table, change it from letter and language to chemistry. I mean, it's going to be just amazing, Steve. So it's about upscaling, but then you need to unleash the potential. You need to have the right regulatory environment to do it. You need to have the right investors' recognition. ROCE is great, profitability is there, but where is my recognition on non-financials? Yeah. So we need to link the dots with regulators and with investors and have a common language.
We've got officially 80 seconds left. I may even sneak over a couple of seconds. But in terms of one thing that's going to drive, I mean, we are amidst the critical decade, I think, so far. We've talked a lot about it ever since Le Bourget, COP21 as well, which I was at, and then Glasgow. This is the critical decade. What is the one positive thing? I know there's some negative things we need to get rid of, but one positive thing we're going to move down the line as well from you, Rebecca, Erica, that actually can galvanize the next 6 years and get us to 2030 targets. As you say, we'll worry about 2050 on another day, but get us to 2030 targets. Rebecca, what's the one positive thing that can drive business as a whole?
It's more a wish than a positive thing that I see, but I think just stronger leaders who are willing to really adopt a scalable
solutions. You mean like these ones here?
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly.
Eric.
I think stronger leaders committing to a transition plan for their company, which is transparent, and then investors, other actors can then assess and help them deliver.
I mean, I don't know what the average tenure of a CEO is. I think I do know. I think it's about 4 to 5 years as well. That's 4 to 5 years where you can make such a difference to the world. Absolutely. Why wouldn't you want to make a mark as well? So leadership who make a mark in transition.
Collaboration.
With others as well, collaborate and have a great ecosystem working together, yeah? Leadership who want to move on transition and work in collaboration with others.
I have trust in younger generation.
And trust in younger generation as well.
Wow.
So we've got leadership who are going to work in transition, who are going to have collaboration, who are going to work with the young generation, and
dream big and be bold.
Dream big, I love that. Dream big, be bold, have strong leaders, work with the young generation, collaborate and make moves forward in transition. It all kind of works, almost as if we planned it, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen? We have Rebecca Minguella, Esther Berger, we have Eric Ash, we have Cenk, Alper, and Dr. Ilham Kadri as well. Thank you very much indeed, all of you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Cenk. It's lovely to see you. Thank you so much. Lovely to see you. It was great. Rebecca, thank you so much. And here's a strong young leader who's doing a transition now.
I'm not that young, I'm afraid.
You will always look younger than me. You know that.
Only by a couple of years. And what are you off to now?
Well,
back to the studio?